Well, we got football this weekend. Whoopee. I'm so burned out on football. I am just so completely soured on the football thing in this country. I don't know if I'm going to watch a single game this year. In fact, I'll take it one step further. If I had a child in the Bismarck Mandan school system, and I am at the right age to do that, but if I did, I would not want them to have anything to do with football. Do you know why I say this? Well, I'll tell you in just a moment here. Number 663-1270. I've had it with football, the whole football thing. And I can sum it up in 2 words. Andrew Luck. Did you see what happened to him a few days ago when he decided to quit football? Unforgivable. 663-1270. Jim Walsh here at Supertalk 1270 and supertalk1270.com. Andrew Luck decided to step down to retire from the NFL for health reasons. He made the announcement and he walked off the field, and what do you think those wonderful fans in Indiana did for him? They booed him. Unbelievable. I just can't wrap my head around that. Here's a guy, and I'm sure it was a heartbreaking decision for him, because if you get into something like professional football, it's a safe bet that it's something that you've struggled your whole life to attain, a lifelong dream. And yet he had to step away from it because of the health issues. And I'm sure it had to destroy him inside. And on top of that, to have to make that kind of announcement and then have people boo you as you walk off the field. What the hell is the matter with some people in this country? It's the football ethos, I call it. The idea that if you don't put football above all else, even your own life, somehow that makes you less of a man. Oh, it's terrible. Totally inexcusable. And a lot of people have been talking about this, but the fact that not only is football a dangerous game, it's arguably the most dangerous game. I mean, other sports have their risks, of course. I mean, you can get your teeth knocked out playing volleyball if you're not careful. But football is one of the few games, well, maybe hockey is one of the others, where that kind of hard, violent, physical contact is actually encouraged. It's actually part of the game. And I can live with that. What I have trouble with is the idea that if you choose to walk away from it, you are going to get booed and catcalled and taunted like somehow you've betrayed all those fans out there. And yeah, it's true. It's a heartbreaking decision. And yeah, I guess the Colts are going to lose some money on the deal. A lot of people are, anytime a star player walks away like that. But you know, it just had to be breaking the guy up inside. And then on top of that, this insult on top of injury. What the hell's wrong with some people? The idea that football is above all else. You know, a guy's health, a guy's well-being, a guy's family. That all takes a second spot to football. Come on. It's like with the Penn State thing a few years ago. Remember that whole thing that happened with the coach, the assistant coach? What was his name again? Not Paterno, the assistant coach. And how he got caught messing around with some kids. And there were people who were actually angry, not at him, but at the people who were calling him out for doing what he did. They apparently were the real bad guys here. Why? Because they interfered with football. They had a winning team, and somebody had to come along and throw a wrench in the works by pointing out the slightly inconvenient fact that we had an assistant coach who was abusing and molesting children. But apparently that wasn't a big deal. That wasn't important to certain people. The important thing is we keep a winning team going because this is America, and America is about football. Everybody genuflect when I say football. Thank you. In terms of sheer stupidity, what is worse in this country? Maybe NASCAR. I don't know. Does that ever happen in NASCAR? You know, a guy flips his car and the car crashes and burns, but he manages to get out. He walks away with, manageable injuries. And he looks back and he goes, you know what? I've had enough of this crap. I quit. I'm retiring right here and now. And he walks away and everybody boos him for doing it. I wouldn't put it past him, but I don't know for a fact that it's ever happened. But in terms of sheer stupidity, blatant stupidity, in the face of genuine human tragedy, nothing comes second in this country to the worship of football. That's why I've had it with football. No football for me this fall, thank you. I've just had it with the whole sad situation. Number here is 663-1270. I can't be the only person who is really soured on football because of this, especially now with the whole Andrew Luck thing. Now, there are people who have stood up for him, and good for them. A lot of NFL players, a lot of his teammates, and a lot of other players across the league have supported his decision, and they have commented on how sad. What's the David DeCastro of the Steelers? He said it's just sad what happened to him. People treat us like we're circus animals. Yeah. Can you talk plainer than that? He's right. And they will continue to do so as long as we have people in this society who put a winning team above all else, including a guy's health, his welfare, and his family. Unbelievable. So are you burned out on football? 663-1270. Love to hear from you. Super Talk 1270. Jim Walsh, more conversation. Your calls coming up. Elvis Costello. Elvis is the man. He's the king, baby. Pump it up. Surely I can't be the only person in this town who is completely soured and burned out on the whole football thing, especially in the wake of what happened here with this fellow Andrew Luck. Because of his health issues, he decided to retire, and what's especially heartbreaking is that it happened right at the tail end, right on the cusp, the cutting edge of the season starting. And a lot of people thought he was kind of a butthead for doing that. I think just the opposite. It had to be a hard, heartbreaking decision for the man. And he was probably giving himself as much time as he could in the hopes that he could get it together and play another season, but it just wasn't in the cards, so he walked away, and people booed him for doing so. That is inexcusable in my book. I've had it with this crap. I don't know if I'll ever watch another football game in my life. Number here is 663-1270, 663-1270. I mean, football is the only game I know of where not only do they encourage hard, bruising physical contact, but they will actually chastise you for walking away from it. Football, or as I like to call it, the smash face game, because that's what it's all about. You line up a bunch of guys on either side of a line, and they kind of smash their faces into each other. That's actually part of the game. Okay, fine. And they do wear protective equipment, blah, blah, blah. They take risks. I understand all that. I'm not against any of that. What I'm against is when you have a guy like Andrew Luck who does what he did and people put him down for having done so. They're still doing it. Because apparently playing football and winning in football is more important than your own life, health, and family. Come on. What's the matter with you people? Got a great comment here. Dale Hansen is a Texas sports commentator. I think he's out of Dallas, one of the TV stations down there. And he's great. He's had a lot of great commentaries over the years. But here's what he said about it. I love this quote. Check this out. Football fans who will cheer the player who beats up a woman or drives drunk and kills people, who will cheer the player who uses illegal drugs, and who will cheer the player who cheats to win, will boo a 30-year-old man who has been in constant pain for 4 years because he chooses his life over money. Yeah, couldn't be more on the mark with that one. Thank you, Dale Hansen. You know, we forgive Michael Vick for what he did. We forgive that one guy, the guy who beat up his girlfriend in the elevator for what he did. All the guys who have been involved in drugs and wife beating and all the other stuff, and that assistant coach at Penn State, Sandusky, right? Apparently people want to forgive him for what he did. Why? Because he had a winning team going. It was the great Nittany Lions of Penn State, the great dynasty. How dare you besmirch the sainted reputation? Everything about Sandusky and Coach Paterno, that's, a hagiography, a sainthood story. I actually unfriended. I actually lost a couple of friends over that one, a couple of lifelong friends who were alumni at Penn State, because they took the position that you can't make fun. You can't put down this guy for doing this. I mean, he left a very important legacy. He won football. I'm not kidding. People actually say this. Winning football games for some people is more important than the fact that the guy molested kids. And they'll support a guy like that. They'll give him a second chance. Michael Vick, a guy who was involved in the abuse of animals, the abuse and torture of domesticated animals, they'll welcome him back with open arms. The guy who beats up his girlfriend in the elevator, they caught it on video. You remember the story. They bring him back. Yeah, all is forgiven. Come on back and win some football games for us. Yay! But the guy who's in pain and decides to chuck it in and says, to hell with this. I'm going to spend the rest of my life with my family, and I have other priorities. My family, my life, my personal welfare. Screw football. And he walks away. He's the one who commits apparently the unforgivable act. He is the one they boo as he's walking off the field. Unbelievable. You know, football's like a religion to some people in this country. It just boggles my mind. Football is our new national religion. Well, some places it's basketball. Okay, if you live in Indiana, actually in Indiana, basketball is more the national religion sport than football. But I mentioned Indiana because that's where it happened. That's where Andrew Luck. He played for the Indiana Colts. You remember the Indiana Colts? I liked him when they were the Baltimore Colts. Don't get me started on Robert Irsay, what a traitor he was to the city of Baltimore. I happen to be an East Coast guy, so that one kind of sticks in my craw as well. But what kind of values do you have to forgive and cheer on all these other guys because they win football games, yet you boo this guy? What does this say about the ethos behind the game of football? I don't know. You tell me. Number here, 663-1270. Some other comments. I mentioned David DeCastro, two-time All-Pro offensive lineman for the Steelers. No slouch. He said, yeah, people treat us like we're circus animals. He's right. There was another one. Who was it? What's his name? Rogers, who said the surprise was obviously the first emotion, but the second emotion was disgust at the way it was handled. Him getting booed, word leaking out the way that it did. I thought it was a little disgusting because here's a guy who's making a quality of life decision. It was Aaron Rodgers of Green Bay who made that comment. And, of course, the teammates, the other members of the Colts, they, for the most part, feel the same way. There was one player who questioned the timing of it, the fact that it happened right before the start of the season. But, again, I say, well, Andrew Luck, his heart had to be breaking. That he probably waited until the last minute to make this decision. But by the last minute, that would mean right on the edge of the start of the season. And his heart had to be breaking when he was doing this. He was kind of grasping for any straw he could. But finally, he had to say, this is it. I'm done. I'm out of here. I can't do this anymore. My family is more important. Well, of course, in the world of football, that's obviously sacrilege. Beat your wife, beat your dog, abuse little kids, molest children. But don't be dissing football. Don't be putting down the big game with a capital F. Capital F. 663-1270. Jim Walsh here at Super Talk 1270 and supertalk1270.com. So much going on to talk about. Hey, how's that hurricane party going? No hurricane party for us this week. In fact, my wife and I are going to take the steamboat ride tomorrow evening, weather permitting. The Lewis and Clark Steamboat, they're having a big Lebowski party. And we just found out about this at the last minute. Otherwise, we would have done the whole costume thing. And I understand they're actually giving a discount to people who show up dressed like characters from the Big Lebowski. I was not going to dress up as the dude, okay? I was going to dress up as Walter, the John Goodman character. Although I probably would not carry a gun, not even a toy gun. And didn't he have the gun stuck in the front of his sweatpants there? I probably wouldn't do that, given the political thing going on these days involving guns. But the rest of it, fake crew cut. Do they make wigs that look like crew cuts? But anyway, we couldn't get it together, so we're just going to go and ride the boat and hang out with Walter and the dude. And maybe what I'll do is I'll bring a Folgers can of ashes, and that could be the Steve Buscemi character. There you go. I'll have to mention that one to my wife. She'll think I'm really sick for bringing that up. Anyway, what else? Oh, and congratulations, by the way. And I'm very sincere about this to friend of the show, devoted coworker Dolly Dakota, who conquered cancer. Today, in fact, Friday was her final chemo session. She got to ring the bell over at the chemo place. You get to ring the bell when you finish your chemo and you beat cancer. And I know she's very happy. I spoke with her earlier this week. She looked great. She's looking much better health-wise. The folks who know Dolly, you guys who know Dolly, you know what I'm talking about. She had a real rough patch there for a while, but she looks good. She feels good. She's in a great frame of mind, and I couldn't be happier for her. Sometimes the good guys do win in this society, and you got to give them a break where you can. All right. Your comments welcome online as well at supertalk1270.com. Love to hear from you. In the meantime, lawyers, guns, and money, and more conversation coming up. Well, what do you think about this football thing? Does it kind of sour you on football? The way people treated Andrew Luck, it did for me. I may not watch a whole game. I may not watch a game this whole season because of it. I'm serious. I just, If this is the value that people place on human life and welfare and family, I want no part of it. I don't know, 663-1270. Your comments welcomed and appreciated here at supertalk1270.com. The Thieving Magpie. Oh, Clockwork Orange music here for you. So what about football? Does it sour you as much as it sours me to see what happened a week ago? The member of the Colts, Andrew Luck, he decided it was time to pack it in, to retire, to step down from playing football. And they booed him for it. It's like, you can forgive a guy for, taking part in dogfights. You can forgive a guy for beating his wife or doing drugs or boogering some kid if you're an assistant coach and abusing your position of power. But apparently the one unforgivable thing that you can do in football is to actually quit playing the game. God forbid. Unbelievable. The priorities we have in this country. I just don't want to even look at football for a while at least. Number 663-1270. Jim Walsh here, Super Talk 1270, supertalk1270.com. I'll talk a little bit about the local police department. Is it time for a bilingual police department in the Bismarck, Mandan area? Now, I mentioned this. I think it may be, and let me give you the number here, 663-1270. I mentioned this because of something that happened this week involving deputies of the Burleigh County Sheriff's Department. And by the way, I did reach out to the Sheriff's Department. I got a comment, which I'll get to in a moment here. But some of the Burleigh County deputies picked up some illegals this week. According to the story, they pulled over a car for running a stop sign. And there was like 5 guys in the car, none of whom apparently spoke any English. It was a lot of no comprendes. And long story short, they all did a Chinese fire drill, or in this case, maybe a Hispanic fire drill. They got out of the car and they took off on foot. They just scattered, took off. And they called the Border Patrol. The Border Patrol managed to round up all but one of the guys. Well, as our community grows, and we will continue to have growth in many areas, including in the Hispanic community, unfortunately, we're going to have more of these type of issues. We're also going to have more issues involving Hispanic citizens who are not criminals, and most of them aren't. Most of them aren't. But there are going to be problems because of the language barrier. Like it or not, you don't have to like it. I know a lot of you anti-immigrant people, you guys with you modern, you neo-know-nothings, you guys with the build the wall fetish. I know a lot of you guys are saying it's a terrible thing, we shouldn't do it, but like it or not, for better or for worse, we are becoming more and more a bilingual society. Nationwide and here too. We may be behind the curve here, but it is happening. So I'm thinking we may have reached the tipping point here. It may be time to start thinking about developing more comprehensive policies in our police department to deal specifically with people in the community who are primarily Spanish speakers. Now, I contacted the Sheriff's Department about this particular issue. And make no mistake here, I'm not holding them at fault for anything. Apparently, what they did, for the most part, what they did was right. I mean, they stopped the car, they're doing their job, and the guys scattered. They had reason to believe because they didn't speak English. They thought, well, they must be from out of the country illegally. They called the Border Patrol. That's fine. I'm not holding them at fault for anything there. They did everything right as far as I can see. But what I'm wondering is if it's time, as a matter of policy, to develop a comprehensive means of dealing with these language issues and these cultural issues like they do in the bigger cities in places like Florida, Texas, and California. Now, I reached out to the Sheriff's Department via social media. Here's their response. We don't have a specific policy, but we have to do whatever it takes, obviously, to communicate with people that don't speak English, up to and including finding an appropriate translator. And this was not the sheriff, by the way. The sheriff wasn't available. I understand that, but this is kind of a thing I did at the last minute last night after reading the story. But my question is whether maybe it's time to develop policies in our police department, city police department, the county sheriff's departments. Some may have policies, some obviously don't. But maybe it's time to start thinking about that for around here, because like it or not, you don't have to like it, but you have to acknowledge that we have a Hispanic community now in the Bismarck-Mandan area. And realistically, obviously, we can't cover all of the different languages that people may conceivably speak. But the Spanish community is problematic because it's big enough to be a real issue. So what I'm suggesting, modest proposal, if you will, is that it's probably time for the police departments, state, county, city, all levels in this state, to start developing more comprehensive policies in dealing with the people who don't speak English. Boom, there you go. My number, 663-1270, 663-1270. No, I'm not talking about building a wall. I'm talking about being realistic here, because we do have Hispanics in Bismarck-Mandan, and we're getting more of them, not less. They are coming. They're coming for the jobs. They're coming for the economic opportunities that presumably we have here with the oil and everything else. We certainly have a lot more in the community than we had, say, 10 or 15 years ago. And all indications are we're going to have even more. You don't have to like it, but it's a fact. So realistically, we're going to have to find ways of dealing with these folks. In the long term, they'll assimilate. In the long term, they will speak our language. They always do. History has shown that in the long term, people will assimilate and become Americans. But for the short term, for the next couple of decades down the road, we've got to deal with this cultural shock that is going on here. And it has to be a realistic policy of dealing with the influx of people who don't speak the Queen's English in this case. But they are here. They are assumably, for the most part, they are obeying our laws. They're here to work. They're here to provide for their families. So, yeah, I don't think I'm being a bleeding heart liberal by saying for a while at least we're going to have to accommodate these folks while they get it together and adjust. Number here, 663-1270. We'd love to get your take on this particular subject here. Again, the question is whether the police department needs to develop, and by the police department, any police department on any level around this area, around the state, whether it's time to start developing a more comprehensive policy for dealing with the folks here who don't speak English. Otherwise, you're going to have a situation like you had the other day where you had a car full of guys and they're sitting there going, no comprende, no comprende, no comprende, and you're going to get nowhere. So how do we deal with that? The point is we have to deal with it. We have to figure out how to deal with this situation. 663-1270. Comments welcome on the Facebook page as well, Supertalk 1270 and supertalk1270.com. Wow, crazy week. Hurricane down in Florida. I've got family in Florida. Every one of my mother's side of the family, pretty much, just about all of them are still in Florida in one place or another. I have an older half-brother who lives in Tallahassee with his family. He has a daughter. She has a family with children. And they're all getting ready. They're basically watching very closely to see what this hurricane does. And later on today, in fact, as soon as I get off the air here, I'm going to update the website. We're going to get some information up there. I'm going to try to find one of those maps that updates itself, that gives you the that tracks the progress of the hurricane, because I know a lot of folks do have friends and family and business interest in that part of the country, and they're want to know what's going on. I know I do. So we'll get that up and running a little bit later for you. In the meantime, hang in there. Cross your fingers. Hope for the best. 663-1270. Jim Walsh at Super Talk 1270. More conversation. Your calls coming up.